Today we're going to talk about workstation setup for resin. Hang on. Howdy, y'all. I want to talk about setting up a workstation for yourself with resin. Resin or epoxy, basically the same thing. Anyway, so it is a chemical in which you need to be careful and mindful of. So I'm going to address that right off the top. My dad's a chemist, PhD, anything about chemical, he's like all over. He's like, you're going to cover your hands, right? Oh yeah, Dad. I got that covered. It's like with gloves, special gloves because it absorbs in the skin. So I'm going to pass that on to you. Make sure you cover with gloves, and we'll cover that on what I use in just a moment. But also, I've got really tall ceilings here. I've got a very well ventilated space, but I also know that I use products with no VOCs. And I do realize there's some products out there that are more on the craft grade or other high heat type resins or things that set up quickly. Be mindful, look at the packaging, read the labels. It'll tell you to take precautions. If you're at all sensitive, clearly if you're sensitive to things you inhale or latex and stuff like that, don't use latex gloves, use a different type of glove. If you're sensitive on what you breathe in, use a mask, but definitely take reasonable precautions, but check your product. Always check your product. So I choose to go with a particular brand because I know it's got no VOCs and I also have a well ventilated space. I do use gloves. Okay. So with that in mind, let's get to the other area. All right. So I did a tiny bit of tidying up, but not tidying up for you. I usually do this at the end of a project. This is my workstation. I haven't done really anything with it to prepare for video. This is normally how I like to set it up. And this seems to be working for me. I've been messing around with resin for a couple of years now. You're getting really, really familiar with the product. You have a basic setup. So I came across this little guy. It's a piece of granite. Actually, we got it granite in our kitchen area of the studio, and this was the cutout for the sink. They made it, it's like a little, hey, welcome gift or thank you for buying our product, and they sent it back to us. I'm like, honey, can I steal that? I want to use it for my heat gun. So I know if anytime I put my heat gun down or whatever way, it's protected there as far as heat wise. So that's why that's there. Or even my torches or something like that. But I use the smaller torches. Now, these are my two resins that I play with the most. Stone Coat resin as well as Just Resin. Both of them, I use them for the art properties that they have. High UV protection, very clear surface as far as the resin. And they do really, really well in long working time. And so that's key for me. Okay, so my little thing right there, that's basically just put my phone on there to charge. So nothing special about that, but I also use my phone as a timer periodically, or we'll play music, while I'm working. Okay, paper towels, must have paper towels. Alcohol, 91% alcohol works, but I also use it for alcohol ink, and I use 91% for that as well. So, and then these are the two glove products that I use. Both of them are nitrile gloves, and the difference between these guys is this one has a tendency to be, the glove is actually a lot, I can't get it out of the package, a lot thinner than the other one is. So if I find that I'm going to be just doing a quickie project, a lot of times I'll go to these. Or if I find that I'm going to have to replace my glove for some reason or another on a regular basis, I'll use these guys. But these are a lot thicker. So if you're going to be working with a project for a while, you can go to that and just clean your hands periodically with alcohol in a rag or alcohol in a paper towel. All right, so I've got a variety of cups. Yeah, can't have enough cups. So whenever I'm working with projects that I'm doing a little bit of mixing of color, like I'm about to do a coaster and I'm going to have mostly clear and a little bit of white or a little bit of gold in there, I'll use these guys because I know I'm going to only mix a little bit. But if I'm going to use any more than a little bit, a lot of times I'll go back to these guys. And the reason for that is that I can use them over and over and over again, clean them out. And if any of y'all have seen my ASMR videos, you'll see that those are the ones I use mostly. And I like these guys I strictly use them for mixing colors in only. Because, and this is the only downside, is the bottom isn't completely flat. There is a little ridge there right on the edge. So it makes it hard for mixing up resin. It's probably fine for paints because this is like an auto body product. But for resin, you need to make sure you get all of A and B mixed up together or else you end up with problems. So that's why I use these for colors. These guys here, I use these for propping up around my piece of artwork. Okay, let's just say that's the artwork. And I'm literally putting cups on either side, and they're higher then. And then I'll rest a board and then a sheet of plastic over it for things that don't fit in my drying station. So that's what those are for. Okay. And then, this is kind of my mess corner. Let's see if I can step you through it. So these guys here, and these are kind of my go-to colors that I use commonly, not all the time, but very common. You'll see me use the Stone Coat base tint quite a bit, bright gold and white paste, and that's my go-to for the black paste. But these are my go-tos for adding tints, transparent colors. And then I've got these guys for shiny metallics. And then my chrome pen, which does amazing things. So those are literally, it's just, I know if I'm like, oh, I want to add something a little bit to this piece, I know I've got this on hand. And there's almost always some new or just a mold that I like a lot. So sometimes I'll put one out there on the counter just so I can grab it at a moment's notice. This is a new one I haven't tried yet. It's a little cluster of crystals. This is so you know it's new because it's got the plastic wrap on it. But usually what I do is I store my molds upside down so that way if any kind of particles of dust collect, it collects on the top. And you know the bottom's all nice and clean and ready to go. But in this case, I don't have to worry about it. Okay. Then my pile of pyramids. I have quite a few of these. These are inexpensive little guys. There's a couple different varieties. One that has like a triangle that kind of swoops out. All those are basically the same principle. The resin peels off of them pretty easy. Only thing I'm worried about is peeling off of is the bottom, so that way they lay as flat as possible. If it collects on the side, I really don't care. But as you can tell, that's the new ones and that's the old ones. These guys I've had for 2 years now. And I was running a bunch of resin pieces that were small. And I was using these guys up and found myself needing some other ones. And of course, after I get them, I haven't used them yet. But anyway, some options for you for cups. And I think I've talked about this in other videos before. If you don't want those or need those or you have other plastic cups on hand and the resin doesn't peel off, don't worry about it. This is another deal that I did a long time ago. And these are just little party plastic cups that you get at the grocery store. And you can tell by the base, I think the resin base goes to here. And what I've done is I've used up as much resin as possible, but you're always going to get a little bit of a coating of resin. So I just put it on the counter or the table like this, let it cure overnight, and then just use it again. Once the resin is cured, there's no reason why you can't put fresh resin in there with your colors and mix it up because it's a nice smooth surface and no problem. Now the only difference is if you're using a lot of glitter in there, you will get some sides that have a lot of texture to it. So I usually have 1 or 2 of these that I used for glitter in the past. But I mean, you could tell there's been a lot of use in this, and you know, eventually it'll get thick enough that it's like, okay, I've pretty much used the tar out of this. But there's many pores. I mean, I barely have any color in these guys each time I'm done with them. So I'm getting really stingy about making sure I use every drop of resin. Anyway, okay. I'm not going to be able to separate these guys one-handed. I can try. Oh, I did. Hey. Okay. So these guys I use primarily for mixing up my resin in the first place. And I usually go by the ounces, but I do have some casting resin that I have picked up. And they do have 1-to-1 ratios, 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 4-to-1, etc., that are handy. And feel free to use those guys. But the accuracy of the ounces works really well for me. I haven't had any problems with it. I just always go and look level when you look at your numbers. And I just go to, hey, I need 12 ounces. Okay, have a 12 of 6. The other part, go from there. So here's my basic math for the day. And then I have a big old stash of caps for spray cans that also work really well as these guys. Because sometimes you'll have some pieces that you either need to get up high enough, or it's a small piece. Say you're doing something that's round and you can't exactly put this close together enough to cover it. It's like maybe it's a small ornament, a little flat cutout kind of thing, and that doesn't quite work. Those things do. So that's why I have a stash of these. And the only thing I'm worried about is keeping this thing nice and clean, and this edge on the bottom nice and clean, so that way it lays flat and it lays flat here. And they usually peel off pretty well. So, and then of course I've got my trusty Dragon torch, which works awesome. I have to admit, I have another one that I'm not going to show because I don't want to badmouth the product, but this sucker lights up really well. Let's see, do I have it even on? Yep. And it's got a little switch for safety kind of deal, but yep, I like it. Yeah, it's a Dragon. Okay, so and this guy here, you're gonna laugh at me on this one. These were for the beds for our boys. They're just like flannel embedded in a plastic or some kind of rubber or something like that. And we've used the tar out of these for arts and crafts to protect the table and stuff. So they're getting their last run here. I think I might have another 2 years out of this. I don't know. And then I'll finally put them to rest. Oh, I almost forgot. Okay. So you mix up resin. A lot of times, some might say mix up for 2 minutes. Some might say mix up for 3 minutes. And we've been using our phones. I know you have. I have been too. And it's like you're in the middle of putting it together. You already got goopy fingers. It's like, crap, I don't want to touch my phone to turn it on to start the timer because I got goopy fingers. Came across this idea. Actually, I was scrolling through Amazon and it popped up and I was like, oh, that would work perfectly. And I've got another one that's a 1 minute one, but I'm giving it to a friend of mine because I know she'll use the tar out of it. It's just a little timer, but you can get them to specific times. So in one of these cases, one of them is a 2 minute and one's a 3 minute. But my 1 minute one is perfect for this kind of mixing. And if you happen to have a 3 minute, mixing one, this works out great. But I don't care if I get this thing all goopy. You just know that when the sand runs out, you don't have to mix anymore. And then for those of you who work with spray paints and resin and you have to wait a while for your resin to settle and it's ready to reactivate again, reactivate micas and stuff, they have some that are okay, let me get it around so you can see this. Okay, fine, it's not gonna do it. Okay, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, and 5 minutes. So you can, if you wanted to track, hey, I need to wait for, let this settle for 20 minutes, 10 minutes, you've got a timer here that you don't have to worry about getting goopy. So, yay. Of course, the only downside is it doesn't go beep, beep. But at least you can get it goopy and not worry about it. So I wanted to share that with you because it was cool. Okay. So on to my workbench area. So these are just little plastic tables, and they're actually adjustable. They'll go to like bench height, regular tabletop height, and almost countertop height. So this is at my hip area. And I've got several of these because they're lightweight. I can move them around in my studio really, really easy. I can put 2 together if I want to work on a big project. Super, super handy. I love them. I've also got a little bitty like TV tray that I steal out of the house quite a bit. I might have to actually buy one for out in the studio. So when I have my area set up and I'm going to do my pours over here, put my colors over here that are already mixed up, and accessing this, if I want something to either stay on the side, whether I'm watching a video on the computer, chatting away, or like I've got some items I might want to pull into a piece and I don't want them to get gooped up yet, I can put them over there. So that's kind of like my little safety zone. But something else that I have found, and this is thanks to Mixed Media Girl. I have to give her kudos on this one. It's a silicone mat, and I haven't had it for long. My trays for my little curing area do make marks on it. I have to just clean it off. But it's interesting. It's kind of a thick little sheet, but it's embedded with silicone. So there's a little bit. See, let me zoom you in real quick. Hang on. There's a little bit of a fiberish to it, kind of like carbon fiber. And you can feel there's some resistance to it when you glide your finger across. But resin peels off like no problem. Now, granted, this has been like 14 hours, I think, of resin, so it's super, super pliable right now. But all this stuff will peel off really, really, really easy. Now, glitter doesn't exactly peel off, but I know eventually I'm going to get some drips on that and make it really easy to get that off. I've just been lazy. But yeah, love this stuff. Let's see. Go-to thing, pulling out the hairs from your pieces. Just a bamboo skewer works great for me. Love it. I go between a couple different. Oh, I didn't show you this. Let me go back. Whoop. Okay. So I have 3 containers here with some basics. These are all this is what I use. I've been using it forever for mixing up my resins. I'll put my little skewers in here. But these are my big either mixing sticks or silicone spatulas for manipulating stuff. Mixing up my colors. Buddies over at Artist Till Death, they have a bunch of clear acrylic sticks that work out really good. The one cool thing about, let me get one that's actually a little decent. Okay. So, you can clean them off really, really easy with alcohol ink. And if you don't, just smooth it out and let the resin cure on it. And it'll be fine. Eventually, you'll be able to peel that off. But they do have a nice little point to them. This does not have a nice little point because I did not clean it off ahead of time. Sorry. See, it has a nice little point for drawing in lines if you need to. But you can use these guys over and over again. But I also carry large popsicle sticks as well as the skinny guys. So if I know I'm going to throw the stick away, I'll use the popsicle sticks. But if I know I can get away with it, I'll use these guys and reuse them over and over again. So, and then this little guy here, kind of a hodgepodge mess. I also use a lot of resin art stuff, and it's kind of a powdery, pre-dissolved paste kind of thing, and I'll use this to scoop that out. But these guys here, I got these with some plastic molds, and it's a hard silicone, but the resin will peel off. But what I like about them is, see how thin they are? So they're really good for scooping up things off like your table and put them into molds. And ATD has some super itty bitty ones for like working with these little guys so they don't tip over. It's hard to put something in something while you're holding a phone. So they work out really good for that. Okay, let me get back. La 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 la. So you can see I'm just done with the project here, and I've got a bunch of cups setting up. Now, I'll show you a little tip. If you put your stick flush right up next to the side, make sure your stick has some resin on it and there's some resin on the cup. When it's fully cured, pop the stick over and you'll hear this little pop sound. And I'm talking like when it gets to that, not fully cured like 30 days later, but you know, if you've got one that cures at 24 hours or 20 hours and stuff like that, you can do that and then pull the stick out. And a lot of times you can clean out your cup majority of the way. Maybe not 100%, but maybe about 95. So it makes cleaning the cups out easy. I have one of these guys on the table that it's got some weight to it, but I will a lot of times will pour the remnants, if there's a little bit, into this cup and basically create a big giant dirty pour, and we'll use that to put into molds when I'm getting towards the end of my working time. Also, like I do artwork and stuff. I don't want to show too much of that because the person hasn't had it yet. It's supposed to be a surprise. Hopefully I didn't screw that up. Anyway, so when you're putting a clear coat on something, let me get out a major zoom. Sorry about that. You got a piece of artwork and you're doing a flake coat on it. And a lot of times I use my hands, but you'll find you have a lot of resin on your hands. What I'll go back to is the big cup that you have originally mixed up your stuff, and I will scrape my hand, and it's amazing how much more resin will go back into it. So something like that to keep that in mind. Pulling out hairs. I think I pretty much caught everything here for most of the basics. Also, plastic on the floor. We're going to be selling my long arm very, very soon. And when that goes away, we're going to throw down some temporary linoleum. So not to worry about any more drips anymore. Just something we can pull up in a couple of years if it gets disgusting and stuff. So that way we're not doing a bunch of plastic sheeting. But this is some of the thicker mil sheeting, like 3 mil or 5 mil. And I'll put the link on that with Amazon as well. So, all right. So that's the basics that I literally use on a regular basis. I hope that helps. Doesn't mean you have to get all the stuff that I get. If it's anything, it's like, you know, I've already got cups. I've already got, you know, it's some kind of cloth on there. But, oh, wow, the timer, you know, hey, if we share all of our hints and tips of what works for us, eventually something will talk to somebody else. You don't have to buy all my stuff. But pay attention to what works for you, and if anything I have offers that kind of little simplicity or hints and tips for you, then grab it. All right. Happy arting. Have fun. One last tip, just because I find myself in this situation and I want to go ahead and share this with you. So I've seen some people have mistakes with this. It's not really mistakes. It's like we've all learned these kind of lessons. And I'm at the end of my bottles on these two particular resins. See, it's got a little bit in there. And I find this one is thick, and so a lot of times I'll turn it upside down and let it take its time to drip out all the stuff. But you can get distracted. You know, it's like, okay, you got this on in there, and you get distracted with a phone call or something like that. And you get the whole, it's like, did I put A in there or did I put B in there? So this is my trick to help out with that. Well, I guess you're getting 2 tips, because one, just putting them upside down, letting them drip and take the time. And then the next time I go to mix resin, meaning time number 2, I'll have this one be the one upside down and take its time to drip. So it's like each one has its little turn. But anyway, so the second part, or my second tip is, when mixing resin, a way to make sure that you don't double up on your either do 2 of part A or 2 of part B, is what I do is whenever I'm mixing my resin, I put in one part. When I'm done, let's just say I pour this one in first. That's already done. What I'll make sure I do is I put this an arm's length away. So that way, when I have both of my resins out here and I poured one and I put it an arm's length away, I know I've already done that one. So if I ever get distracted and there's one there, I know that's the one that's remaining. I hope I'm making sense with that. So in other words, you put the one that you've already poured an arm's length away, or down below, or however you store your resin. So that way you don't accidentally put in 2 of one part, and because we never want to do that, because then it's a whole big waste. So just wanted to share that with you. Later. Later, and hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, but definitely hit the bell, because you never know what I'll put up next. Later, y'all.